For thousands of years, the galaxy was ruled by powerful alien empires. They conquered planets, built giant cities, and fought endless wars. But there was one place they all feared: Earth. It wasn't because of humans. No, humans were weak, nothing special. It was because of what was beneath Earth's surface. Every great empire that tried to dig deep into the planet had vanished. No one knew why. No one wanted to find out. Until now. Captain Elias Carter stood at the edge of the massive hole in the middle of the Sahara Desert. His team had been sent by the United Nations Space Division to investigate a strange signal coming from deep underground. The signal wasn't human. It was old, and it was calling for something or someone. Are you sure about this? Dr. Helen Ruiz, the team's lead scientist, adjusted her visor. The last time someone tried to go down there, they never came back. Carter smirked. That was thousands of years ago. We have better tech now. The team activated their anti-gravity suits and slowly descended into the darkness. Their flashlights illuminated the rocky walls covered in strange markings. Symbols from alien civilizations long extinct. Carter felt a chill run down his spine. The deeper they went, the quieter everything became. No wind. No echoes. Just silence. After an hour of descending, they reached the bottom. A vast cavern stretched before them, too large to be natural. At the center stood a massive black structure, pulsing faintly with energy. It was ancient, older than any human civilization. The strange signal was coming from inside it. Dr. Ruiz approached the structure. Her scanner beeped wildly. This material, it's not on any known periodic table. Carter touched the surface. It was warm, almost alive. Then the ground shook. Movement detected. One of the soldiers shouted. The team raised their weapons as the cavern walls began to shift. What they thought were rocks were something else. Skeletons. Thousands of them. Some belonged to species Carter had never seen before. Others looked terrifyingly familiar, human skulls, twisted and mutated. Then the whispers began. Faint at first, then louder. Voices speaking in languages no one recognized. The black structure started to glow. A deep rumble echoed through the cavern, like a beast waking up. Fall back. We need to leave. Carter's voice was cut off as a force pulled him towards the structure. His feet left the ground. The same happened to the others. They screamed as invisible hands dragged them toward the glowing core. Dr. Ruiz struggled against the force, her eyes wide in horror. It's feeding. Carter's mind filled with visions. Planets being consumed. Empires crumbling. The same thing had happened before. The greatest civilizations in the galaxy had all come here, drawn by the signal. And every single one of them had been devoured. Earth wasn't just a planet. It was a trap. With his last ounce of strength, Carter reached for his emergency detonator. If they were going to die, they couldn't let this thing take humanity next. He pressed the button. The explosion rocked the cavern. The force holding them released, throwing them back. The structure let out a terrible sound, a scream that wasn't human. The cavern walls began to collapse. Carter grabbed Dr. Ruiz and sprinted toward their escape ropes. The team scrambled upward as rocks fell around them. As they reached the surface, the hole sealed itself shut, as if it had never been there. The ground stopped shaking. The whispers faded. Breathing heavily, Carter looked back at the desert. The black structure was gone, buried again. But the signal had stopped. Maybe, just maybe, they had ended it. Or maybe it was just waiting for the next empire to come looking. The universe was vast, filled with powerful civilizations, but Earth was different. It wasn't the strongest or the most advanced, yet something about it terrified the galaxy. Every great empire that had ever existed had tried to uncover its secret, and every single one had vanished. No one knew why. Until now. Dr. Michael Hayes, a leading scientist in the United Nations Space Division, had spent years studying strange energy readings deep beneath Earth's surface. One day, his team discovered an old alien map buried under the ice in Antarctica. The map pointed to a hidden entrance leading underground. It was a warning: do not enter. Do not wake them. Despite the warning, the mission was approved. A team of scientists, soldiers, and engineers descended into the hidden tunnels beneath the ice. The deeper they went, the stranger things became. The walls were lined with symbols from extinct alien languages. The air was unnaturally still. After hours of walking, they reached a massive door, unlike anything seen before. It was covered in glowing symbols, pulsating as if alive. Dr. Hayes touched it, and it slowly opened. A dark tunnel stretched beyond, leading to something enormous, a massive underground city, abandoned but intact. "Impossible," whispered Lieutenant Carter, gripping his weapon. No one ever mentioned this. The team moved cautiously. Buildings stood untouched, as if their inhabitants had left in a hurry. In the center of the city was a colossal structure, humming with energy. That was where the signal was coming from. Dr. Hayes placed a scanner on the structure's surface. This technology is older than any civilization we know. The machine suddenly activated. The ground trembled. A deep mechanical voice echoed through the chamber. "You were not supposed to come here." Panic spread through the team. Weapons were drawn. Lights flickered. And then they saw them, figures emerging from the shadows. They weren't aliens. They weren't human. They were something else, something forgotten. One of the creatures stepped forward. It had no face, only shifting patterns of light where its eyes should be. It spoke in perfect English. "Your kind was never meant to find this place." Dr. Hayes swallowed hard. "What is this city?" The being paused. Then it said something that sent chills down their spines. "This is where the first ones were buried. The ones who created your world. The ones who must never wake." The team barely had time to react before the ground began to crack. The structures trembled. Something beneath them was stirring. A force so ancient, so powerful, that entire alien civilizations had been erased just for coming too close. "Run!" Carter shouted. The team turned and sprinted for the exit. The city began collapsing behind them. Strange whispers filled the air, not voices, but something deeper, something reaching into their minds. One by one, members of the team fell, vanishing into the darkness. Dr. Hayes and a few survivors barely made it back to the surface. The ground beneath them sealed itself shut, as if the city had never existed. The warning had been true. The thing beneath Earth was not meant to be disturbed. And now, it knew they had found it.as they stood in the icy wasteland. The last message from the underground city echoed in their minds. The secret has been uncovered. The cycle begins again. For centuries, Earth was ignored by the galaxy's most powerful empires. Not because it was weak, but because it held a secret no one dared to uncover. Every species that had tried to dig too deep into its surface had disappeared without a trace. No warnings, no survivors, only silence. But humans were different. They did not fear the unknown. When the world's largest mining company detected an unusual energy reading from miles beneath the ocean floor, they sent a team to investigate. Dr. Emily Carter, an expert in deep-sea exploration, led the mission. Their submersible, the Abyss, descended into the darkness, its lights cutting through the cold, black water. The deeper they went, the more unnatural everything felt. The sonar picked up strange formations, structures too symmetrical to be natural. "We shouldn't be here," whispered Logan, the ship's engineer. But it was too late to turn back. The submersible reached a vast underwater cavern. In the middle stood a massive black obelisk, humming with an eerie glow. Symbols, older than any known civilization, covered its surface. The readings from the scanner spiked uncontrollably. Emily pressed her hand against the structure. The water around them vibrated, and a deep, resonating voice filled the submersible. "You were not meant to find this." The walls of the cavern trembled. Something ancient, something alive, had awakened. The obelisk's glow pulsed faster, and suddenly, the ocean itself seemed to shift. Shapes moved in the darkness, impossibly large, too fast to be whales, too quiet to be machines. Surface. Now, Emily shouted. The abyss turned, thrusters roaring, but the ocean was no longer on their side. A powerful current pulled them back toward the obelisk. Logan screamed as something massive brushed past the submersible, its presence alone enough to make their instruments fail. The voice returned, but this time it spoke in a whisper that echoed inside their minds. Every empire before you tried. Every empire before you fell. The walls of the cavern began to collapse. The creatures in the water moved closer, their forms still hidden. The abyss shook violently as something wrapped around it. The pressure alarms blared. They were running out of time. Emily made a decision. She activated the emergency energy charge, sending a pulse through the water. The force broke them free for a moment, just enough time to escape. The submersible rocketed upward, the crushing darkness below swallowing the cavern whole. As they reached the surface, the ocean calmed. The scanners showed nothing but empty water. The obelisk was gone, as if it had never existed. Logan exhaled shakily. What was that? Emily didn't answer. She looked at the readings still flickering on her screen. Whatever they had found beneath the surface wasn't meant to be disturbed. The other species had been right to stay away, and now it knew humans had come. The cold wind howled across the frozen wasteland of Antarctica. Dr. Adrian Wells tightened his coat as he and his team approached a strange metallic structure buried beneath the ice. It wasn't human-made. It was something else, something ancient. The readings from their scanners had led them here, deep into the most isolated place on Earth. But they weren't the first to find it. A long-dead alien message had been carved into the ice. Do not enter. Do not wake them. Adrian's heart pounded as he studied the alien symbols. The warning had been ignored before, and whatever had happened to those who came first had been erased from history. But he wasn't here to turn back. He was here to discover what lay beneath. His team activated their drills. The ground trembled as the ice cracked, revealing a dark tunnel that spiraled down into the unknown. One by one, they descended into the abyss. Their flashlights illuminated walls covered in markings from civilizations long gone. Each symbol told a story, a timeline of empires that had tried to claim what was hidden here. All of them had failed. At the tunnel's end, they found a massive door made of a metal no human had ever seen before. It pulsed with energy, as if waiting for something or someone. Adrian reached out and placed his hand against it. The door shuddered, then slowly slid open. Beyond the door lay a chamber filled with colossal machines, humming softly as if they had never stopped working. At the center of the room stood a pedestal, and upon it a single key, a key that seemed to shimmer with an unnatural glow. "This is it," whispered Sarah, the team's engineer. "This must be the source of the signal." Adrian stepped forward, but a deep, resonating voice filled the chamber. "You are not the first. You will not be the last." The room shook. The walls shifted. From the shadows, figures began to emerge, tall, faceless beings covered in armor that looked like liquid metal. They had been waiting. Watching. "What do we do?" someone shouted. Adrian knew the answer. They had to leave. Now, he grabbed the key, and in that instant, knowledge flooded his mind, visions of civilizations far more advanced than humanity, all of them destroyed the moment they unlocked the secret hidden here. This was not a treasure. It was a weapon. A trap designed to end empires before they became too powerful. The beings advanced. Alarms blared. The walls began to close in. Adrian turned and ran, the key clutched tightly in his hand. The team sprinted back toward the entrance, dodging collapsing structures and the terrifying creatures that pursued them. They barely made it out. As soon as they reached the surface, the tunnel sealed itself shut, as if it had never been there. The wind howled again, covering their tracks with fresh snow. Adrian stared at the key, knowing it was too dangerous to keep. He looked at his team, each of them realizing the same truth. Some secrets were never meant to be unlocked. Deep in the uncharted reaches of space, a small group of explorers set out to investigate an ancient planet. The planet had been abandoned for centuries, but there was something strange about it. Its coordinates were hidden in an old star map, and rumors spoke of an energy source called the core, something that was believed to be long lost. The crew was eager to discover it, not knowing what it truly was. Commander Sarah, the leader of the mission, had heard the whispers. The core, they said, was not just an energy source. It was a living thing, something that had watched civilizations rise and fall. But such talk was dismissed as myth. The team was prepared for anything, or so they thought. The ship landed on the cold, barren surface. The air was thin, and the gravity weaker than Earth's. The planet seemed deserted, no signs of life, no sounds in the air. Only dust and dead stone. As the crew stepped off the ship, an uneasy silence surrounded them. Sarah felt a shiver run down her spine as she looked at the desolate landscape. It felt like they were being watched, but by what? Their mission was simple: locate the core and investigate its power. They followed the coordinates, which led them to an ancient temple buried deep within the mountains. The structure was massive, covered in strange symbols that no one could decipher. It stood as though it had been waiting for them, standing the test of time and storms. The air inside the temple was thick with dust, and the walls seemed to hum with a quiet energy. The further they went inside, the more they felt the weight of something watching them, though no one spoke of it aloud. Then, they found at the center of the temple, in a vast chamber, lay the core. It was not what they had expected. It wasn't just a simple object or machine. It was a glowing sphere, hovering in the center of the room, surrounded by intricate patterns of light. The core was beautiful, its light pulsing like a heartbeat, but something about it felt wrong, as if it was aware of their presence. Sarah hesitated, her hand hovering over the controls of her scanner. She knew they had to understand what it was, but the closer they got, the more unsettled she became. The room grew colder, and she could feel her breath in the air. The others were whispering, their voices barely audible over the hum of the core. "Do you feel that?" Lieutenant Daniels whispered. He was always the first to notice something strange, but this time, everyone felt it. There was a pressure in the air, an invisible weight that seemed to grow stronger with each passing second. Before Sarah could respond, the ground trembled. The lights flickered. Then, without warning, the core's glow intensified. It began to pulse faster, and the chamber shook violently. The team stumbled, trying to regain their balance as a deep, resonating voice filled the room. "Who dares disturb my slumber?" The voice wasn't loud, but it was everywhere, inside their heads, inside their bones. It wasn't a voice that belonged to any human. It was something far older, something that had seen the rise and fall of countless worlds. The core was no longer just a power source. It was alive, aware, and angry. The team tried to run, but the temple seemed to change, walls shifting and closing off their paths. They were trapped. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. "We need to get out," she screamed, but the words were swallowed by the tremors. The core's voice boomed again. "You cannot leave. You are mine now. I have watched you, and you are as much a part of this place as the stones beneath your feet." A flash of light exploded from the core, and the explorers found themselves frozen in place, unable to move. Time itself seemed to stretch, their minds racing but their bodies still. It was then that Sarah realized the truth: the core wasn't just a power source. It was a prison, one that had been watching them from the moment they arrived. The walls of the temple seemed to pulse with life, closing in around them. Their thoughts were not their own. The core was in their heads, reading their deepest fears and desires. They were being consumed by its presence, trapped within its endless gaze. Sarah tried to reach for her comm device, but it was gone. There was no escape. They were bound to this place forever. And so, the explorers were lost, their bodies and minds consumed by the core. Their names would fade into history, forgotten by time, while the core continued its watch, waiting for the next travelers to stumble upon its prison. The core had seen it all, now would see them.